What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We're back doing another preview video for round 2 of the Rugby Championship 2023. This is sort of like World Cup preview as well, I guess, because I'm not quite settled on how I think all of these teams across this weekend are going to end in the pools, but I've got a really strong feeling that we might be seeing both of these games actually happening in the World Cup quarterfinals. It's how the pools work out. I'm just not quite sure on who's going to win or come maybe second in each of their pools, but I still think there's a really good chance we could be seeing both of these games. Starting out then with a massive one, the All Blacks versus the Springboks, both teams winning last week in relatively dominant fashions, you'd have to say. There was a lot of talk about a B team, South Africa, going up against a new Australia team. They absolutely demolished that game. New Zealand went over to Argentina. You always got to be wary of Argentina at home. They just sort of demolished them too. So both of these teams coming in with spirits high, and I think we'll be targeting this game with that World Cup in sight. There is a good likelihood this ends up being a quarterfinal match, right? So out of all the games over this Rugby Championship, not only maybe like a tournament deciding game, but also a real target game for longevity as we get towards September. We get to see that World Cup. This could be the thing that takes you to a semi-final, is winning this game. So taking a look then at the New Zealand team first. All they're playing is the home team, so we'll have a look at them first. Ethan de Groot, Cody Taylor and Tyrell Lomax going in. So the props remaining the same as last week. Cody Taylor coming in. I did think Dane Coles played well. I haven't heard any sort of injury news about it or anything, but Cody Taylor is certainly a very experienced hooker to come in. Scrum time is going to be enormous between these two sides. Your forwards are going to be extremely tired by the end of this game. I can already see it. So bringing Cody Taylor in is absolutely not a terrible move. That's a really strong front row for them to go up against a big Springbok scrum as well. In the lock department, Brodie Retallick comes in alongside Scott Barrett. Now, Scott Barrett played 4 last week, right? So he's moved to 5. Brodie Retallick coming back in. I believe Sam Whitelock still hasn't sort of recovered from his little injury that he's had along the way. But Brodie Retallick, Scott Barrett, still a nice combo. Brodie Retallick was playing well when I got to see the sort of highlights from the Super Rugby as well. So I think that's still a good mix. And Scott Barrett last week, just all over the park, man. He was having a superb game, as was quite a few of this back row here for New Zealand. Shannon Frizzell, Sam Cane and Ardie Savea. Of course, Ardie Savea just doesn't have a bad game anyway. It's just not really in his wheelhouse. But Sam Cane, I thought, played really well. Shannon Frizzell exceeded some expectations for me. The blindside flanker for New Zealand, for the last couple of years, I've never really been quite set on I think they've got an absolute standout blindside flanker. Shannon Frizzell's had a few hit or miss games for me along the way, but last week I thought he played extremely well. It was really nice to see. So a very strong back row for this New Zealand team as well. Oh man, the scrum time. I'm really excited. As a neutral, this is probably the game I'm most excited for going into this Rugby Championship, just to watch these two teams hammer away at each other. This game could end like 6-all or 40 points all. Who knows? It's just going to be both teams absolutely crushing each other. But 1 to 8, absolutely solid as it needs to be going up against the Springboks pack looking as big as they do. In the halfback partnership, Aaron Smith retains at 9. Richie Mwanga moves to fly half. Now, Damien McKenzie gone from the team entirely. Was certainly doing well around the park last week in terms of getting his try assists and stuff, kicking towards the posts. Not as good as I was expecting after hearing about how well he was doing in the Super Rugby. Kicking towards the post, not the best. So Richie Mwanga stepping in now as fly half, and D-Mac dropped from the team entirely. But Aaron Smith and Richie Mwanga is a combo we've seen plenty of times in the past. These two lads will be working very well together. Looking forward to see what Richie Mwanga does. I'm really interested in how the teams are going to interact. New Zealand here jumping ahead a little bit. They've gone for a 5-3 split. Maybe they're going to be looking to show off a bit of the pace we got to see last week from the centres of, Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane. Rieko Ioane last week showing that he's still got immense pace. He's so good carrying that ball in hand. I'm wondering whether this New Zealand team might actually utilise, the forward pack, forward on forward, but then their game might be a bit more expansive than the box game and actually try and work their way around the sides and use these backs. Richie Mwanga as a distributor, but also as that sort of threat that he always has, where he sort of feels like he's going to distribute, but he loves just cutting back against the grain and going for runs himself, so you can never count him out. But Geordie Barrett last week as well in that centre partnership, man, he's up there. Considering if you go back to last year, I think I even said in the preview video, I'm not sure how he'll get on at centre. Geordie Barrett's just time and time again showing he's an absolute monster in terms of that inside centre. I don't really think I would pick anyone ahead of him in this New Zealand team anymore in that inside centre. And then finally in the back three, Mark Talia comes in going into that left wing, Will Jordan on the right wing, and Beauden Barrett retains at fullback. So 2 changes on the wings. Mark Talia I'm really looking forward to see, because my understanding is he's been crushing it in the Super Rugby. There has been tries for days, and Will Jordan just pace. Will Jordan's that sort of player that for quite a few games can actually sit there and just be quite quiet. He can just be working on the defensive. He's helping out in rucks. He's actually not really getting that involved. And then you give him the ball in the 70th minute when everyone's knackered, and he just outruns everyone. He's so quick. You've got a real danger player there. You can never just let him have time. You've got to be on him straight away. But Mark Talia, one of the ones I'm really looking forward to. And I see the Beauden Barrett retained at fullback, actually. People still quite 50-50 about him. I think he's playing well at fullback. I think for me personally, I've actually been preferring him seeing at fullback than playing at 10. So hopefully he stays there for a good little while. In terms of the bench then, Samsoni Taukiaho goes in alongside of Tamaiti Williams and Nepu Laulala. Now that's a great name, right? Tamaiti Williams is a new debutant for New Zealand. What a game to make your debut against. Yeah, just come on in the second half versus Springboks pack working at, pretty full strength. Wow. Big ask for him. I don't know a lot about him personally. I gave him a quick look, though. He seems like a bit of a unit of an individual, so he's going to be bolstering that scrum in the second half, so really looking forward to see that. Rest of the replacement forwards then, Tupo Vai alongside Dalton Papali'i. 5-3 split was a big call, seeing how dominant the Springboks were against Australia last week in the forwards pack. Now, I mean, New Zealand were also doing well at like scrum time and maul time. I think they were doing well. The forward pack was still looking good for them. But there was something about the Springboks Wallabies game that I was more impressed by the achievement of what the Springboks were doing. People like Stephen Kitchoff just mowing down really talented props in the Australian team. And I was kind of more impressed slightly by the South African work rate than we got to see in the New Zealand game. So I did wonder whether New Zealand might go down to the 6-2 and try and counteract the forward with another, massive forward pack of their own. It would just be a battle of power. But they've gone for the 5-3, so maybe they're hoping this game will open up in the second half. And the replacement backs then, Finlay Christie, Braden Ennor, and Caleb Clark going on as well. Now, Caleb Clark, again, a little bit quiet last week for me. It's interesting to think about how they're going to try and arrange this team, because obviously Braden Ennor is going to come on at centre. Injury to wing is fine because Caleb Clark comes on. Injury to fullback, I assume there's going to be a lot of swapping about. I assume if Beauden Barrett got injured, I assume they're going to move someone like Will Jordan to fullback, and then Caleb Clark would have to come on. I've only ever seen Caleb Clark play left wing, so I assume Mark Talia moves back to the right wing, where I'm more used to seeing him, and then Caleb Clark goes to left wing. But it is something that I've spoken about in the past about New Zealand. One thing that I really do like about this team is just that they have that utility. There's plenty of teams in the world that will just be like, oh, we've got an injury there. You're going to have to somehow make it work. New Zealand are one of those teams that seem to have enough players that can play all these different positions and sort of move about, that it might not be the worst thing. If you do have injuries, you can shake up the team. But overall, a really good 1-23 from New Zealand, expecting a really big game from this Boks side. Moving on to the Springboks team then. There was a whole thing about that they sent out a group of players to New Zealand early. While this game was going on last week, to try and acclimatise to New Zealand, and then they were going to utilise some of those players. I believe they sent out 14 players, and out of those 14, 10 have got into the team. I kind of feel a bit bad for the lads that went out there a week early, did all the training prep, and then haven't actually got into this team. But that just shows how strong some of these Springboks players are. They can actually not need to do any of the acclimatising, fly straight over, and just get straight into the starting team. Starting on then in the front row, Stephen Kitchoff, Bongi Umbanambi, and Frans Malherbe. Now, Stephen Kitchoff, not even meant to be there last week, and if you were an Australian supporter, you might be thinking, why did he have to turn up? Because he was, oh man, absolutely dominating in the scrums. It's going to be one of the real big battles this weekend, is going to be seeing how these lads get on at scrum time. The set piece for South Africa was looking good. The only one that was a bit shaky was that line out, and Umbanambi will be trying to work on that line out, I'm sure, in the background. Of course, they had some different locks in last week as well. Sometimes, new mix-ups, getting the jumps called wrong. A couple of them did work, like Arence's second try, right? It was the lineup they sort of peeled back around on the inside. They did get the calls right. Everything worked well for them. But a couple of those lineouts not quite hitting the mark. And maybe against an Australia team that's still trying to find its feet, you sort of get away with it a little bit. New Zealand, I feel like, will punish you a lot more. So I feel like they're going to have to be one of their target areas to work on this week. It might be an area that New Zealand try and exploit. You know, Brody Brutalic coming back in now, trying to get involved in that lock department. But the Springboks bringing their own big giant locks to this game. Eben Etzebeth and Lou Diaga coming back into this team now this week. Now, I did see yesterday some sad news that Eben Etzebeth's father has actually passed away. So as of the time of filming this video, it's not confirmed if he will play or will be flying back to South Africa. If it's known by the time you're watching the video, feel free to drop it down in the comments, help some other people get a sort of head start on that one. But I'm not really sure what he'll do. I've seen players do either or. When, you know, a family member passes away, some of them go home. Some of them, it becomes like a driving force for the next game and they play out of their skin. So I'm not really sure what Eben Etzebeth will do, but condolences to him. Hopefully, you know, he does the decision that's right for him. And if he plays the game, has an awesome game. If he needs to go back, I'm sure most people involved in rugby will absolutely support him in that decision. Replacement locks. I think Klein has also flown out with them. He's not named in the team, but he's sort of on that reserves bench. So he can also fill in, or Sneeman's on the bench. Still a massive unit to bring in. Only question then is captaincy. I'm not sure who would take over that. South Africa tend to lean towards their forwards as captains. I'm not really sure who's done a lot of captaincy past. That's just a bit of a knowledge gap on my end personally. But they still got a really good strength and depth for the lock department as well. So I'm sure they'll make the right decision there. In the back row, Kwagga Smith comes in alongside Franco Mostert and Jasper Wiese. So an entirely new back row, considering people like Dwayne Vermeulen, who I was maybe even a little bit critical of leading up to that game, thought had a fantastic game at number 8. Jasper Wiese will have to fill in, you know, big ball carrying circles, get involved in that. Kwagga Smith is one of those lads I don't see enough people talk about. I think he's an exceptionally good player. Getting a start this week, which is really nice. I normally get to see him come on from the bench because he's such an impact player from the bench. But I'm really looking forward to getting to see him start now in this blind fly flanker position. But overall, as a 1-8, again, Power in this South African team, man. The scrum time is going to be absolutely brutal. In the halfback partnership, Faf de Klerk goes in alongside Damien Willemse. And, you know, I'm a little bit surprised by this just because Libbok was playing so well last week. Damien Willemse obviously was also involved with that team last week as well. So it's not like, you know, the acclimatizing or anything is going to be, you know, a big factor in that one. I thought Libbok was really good. I thought Damien Willemse might be better on the bench because, of course, he plays fly half, fullback, centre if you need him to. I thought he'd be better as a utility sub to come, but they've gone for the Faf de Klerk Damien Willemse combo. Maybe just experience working together more, going up against a big team like New Zealand played a big factor in that one. Centre partnership returns to the standard then in Damien de Allende and Lekanya Am, but Andre Esterhuizen. Wow, very, very impressive from him last week. I was really enjoying the style of rugby he was bringing to that centre partnership. And the Australian defence had a bit of a nightmare trying to stop him last week. So Damien de Allende getting in, but actually might be looking over his shoulder a little bit as Esterhuizen's, you know, growing into this team a little bit more now, could become a bit of a decent threat to that position. But Damien de Allende and Lekanya Am, I don't even know how many caps these two have together now, but this is just the centre partnership you sort of begun to expect to see in South Africa. But I feel a little bit bad for Esterhuizen. I did think he had a really good game last week. And then finally in that back three, Makazole Mapimpi goes in alongside Cheslin Colby and Willie Leroux at fullback. Now, Arendse did get 3 tries last week. Could have been 4 if there wasn't a purposeful knockdown out of the way. And there's not a lot of teams in the world that a player scores a hat-trick in, you know, an international side and then doesn't get to play the next week. But you bring in someone like Cheslin Colby, and you know, you've got a similar player skill set. Cheslin Colby's also a massive threat, you know, running with the ball in hand. So again, you know, a little bit bad for Arendse, but you know, Cheslin Colby, you absolutely can't discount getting in. Kicking duties for Springboks, tricky to call because Damien Willemse can kick, Cheslin Colby can kick. I've seen Cheslin Colby kick. I don't think the accuracy is necessarily the best from Cheslin Colby at an international stage. Willemse would probably be my first pick, but again, I feel like I would lean more into having Libbok start and just let him kick and bring Willemse on wherever he's needed in that second half. Might be the only change I would think of. But a good strong 1-15 power game, also sort of reflected in this replacements bench. Okay, Malcolm Marx, Thomas du Toit, and Vincent Koch. Malcolm Marks coming back in. Really looking forward to see him make an impact from this bench. Getting himself acclimatised out there. I'm expecting a big game from him. The Boks, though, have gone for the 6-2 split with Sneijman, Steph du Toit, and Dwayne Vermeulen on the bench. So some of these lads, you know, playing so well last week. Dwayne Vermeulen, Peter Steph du Toit, moving to the bench. Having the more sort of acclimatised players starting, probably a nice move. But these lads will come on in that second half and just be chomping at the bit, I think, to get involved in this game. 6-2 split to me is showing the, you know, intent from South Africa. I'm not expecting this ball to go wide super often, especially not in that first half. I imagine this will be a set-piece game. Both teams looking to dominate the scrum. Both teams trying to look to dominate the driving maul. And the 6-2 split just gives Springboks a little bit of extra longevity into the game, whereas I think New Zealand might be wanting to utilise the backs a bit more, just to try and help not let their forwards get, you know, tired too early into that game. And then finally the replacement backs as well. We have Grant Williams and Marnie Libok coming in there as well, who I thought played a superb game last week. Cobus Reinach, not mentioned. I thought he played well as well. I'm very interested to see Grant Williams play a bit more, though I haven't seen a lot from him personally. So I'm looking forward. He'll be one of the names I'm sort of keeping an eye out for this week in terms just to help my own knowledge of the game. So what do we think in terms of a score prediction? I did have a quick look on like on the betting site stuff. They seem to have New Zealand quite heavily favourites. There was like 8 to 10 points depending on the site you were looking at. I really don't think it'll be like that. I've got a feeling this will be a really tight game. I've seen a lot of close games between these two sides in the past, separated by 1, 2, 3 points. There's the occasional blowout here and there. Oh man, who do you go for? I think I might even go slightly against the betting site ones. I actually feel like I might be leaning more towards South Africa for this one. I think the game they showed against Australia last week was so nice to see them open up and expanding out and letting their wingers go. This team doesn't seem to be doing that. It seems to be going back to a bit more of, you know, the South Africa we expect, going through the forwards. Maybe New Zealand prep for that. Maybe they're more ahead of the game. Maybe I'll get this call wrong. I'm thinking, though, that a 6-2 split, South Africa sticking with the forwards and just going for some monster driving maul tries and just trying to get a dominance of that scrum and having penalties and stuff might actually be a bit of a clinch for this one. So I'll go for a South Africa win, and I'll say by 2 points. I'm going to go low. I don't go high in this one. But let me know your score predictions down in the comments, guys, because I really enjoy having a read through them. If you haven't already, make sure you do sort out your Super Brew teams as well, because I had a terrible round last round. So if you want to keep beating me at Super Brew, make sure you get your teams locked in before this game kicks off on the weekend. Of course, we'll be doing one of these videos for the Australia-Argentina game as well, so make sure you are subscribed to know when that video comes out too. I'll see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.